and finally Pablo Bartholomew. I'll hand you over to Vidura now.
Good afternoon, everyone.
नहीं फिर नहीं आ पाऊंगा मैं
I'm a little nervous, I have to admit. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone at the Delhi Photo Festival for making this possible, for making this event possible. Dinesh and Prashant have been talking about this for a while. And believe me, it's a dream come true for all of us to be here at the festival. And I'd like to also thank them for this opportunity to be a part of the festival. One thing I'd just like to say is that this is truly an inclusive festival in many ways, across generations, generations of photographers, young and old. And, Danita was talking, about how, this has brought about a certain healing for photographers of her generation. That, Dinesh and Prashant have managed to do that. I think somewhere, they brought about a healing for an entire, not just one generation of photographers, but generations of photographers. And I think that's what makes this event really special. And I'd just like to thank them once again for making this possible. Can we just have a round of applause for, And this is truly a photographers' festival, because I don't know if many of you know that many of the people working behind this festival are all photographers. Whether they're volunteers, people in administration, people like Karan, Mansi, Adil, Hajra. There are lots of people, I'm sure I'm forgetting their names, who've really worked hard. Round of applause for them too. Thank you. I think many speeches. I'll come back to my project. This is a project titled Home. It's my work on the Chinese. It's actually, I don't know if I look at it as work or a journey that I made. I lived in China for many years, and about 3.5 years. And roughly, I spent a year teaching English, and then I went back a second time to study Chinese for a year, and then I worked in film and photography in China. The work that I'm showing you, however, is my work on the Chinese in India. It started, sometime in 2005, 2006, early 2006. It's an ongoing body of work. It's still a journey that I'm kind of navigating, and I don't say that what you're going to see here is my final edit of images or that my journey is complete. I think there'll be many questions around, in various forums at the festival about when do you feel that a project is over. For me, this project is yet, is yet to be over, and I'm really enjoying this process. It's been a very learning, it's been a fantastic experience, and there've been highs and lows. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the slideshow for you, and then we'll just open it up to questions, and hopefully, then I'll be able to kind of explain how I went about this journey and what this journey means to me.
如果有一天我走了，你会像马达那样找我吗？
会啊。
会一直找吗？
会啊。
会一直找到死吗？
会啊。
你撒谎。 如果有一天我走了，
I really enjoyed my time in China, and there was a sense of dislocation when I came back. And there were times that I would kind of stop Chinese people on the street and try and talk to them. There was a sense of, a longing for the time that I spent in China, and I learned about the community here from a friend in Qingdao who was from Calcutta. She was Chinese, and she was married to a Chinese from the mainland, and she would often laugh and tell us that, why don't you come home and I'll cook you some Indian Chinese food, and she would curse the Chinese, and things like that. So it was interesting. I kind of went to Calcutta in 2003 for New Year, and was absolutely taken aback by the large numbers of the people there, the community, Chinatown. But my work has been started out by trying to engage with people around China and my memories of China, my journeys in China. And a lot of the Chinese here that I met had never been to China. So I used to walk around with a box of prints, visit people, go to their homes, and I would share my stories of China with them while they would share their stories of life in India, or lots of curiosity and a lot of questions about what it was to be in China. And there was this exchange that took place, and over time I started photographing the people that I met, and you'd hear tales about families somewhere in Assam, or families in Jamshedpur, or in Durg, in Bhilai, in small towns across India, and there was this curiosity to know what led them there. It was also kind of my interest in understanding what it meant to be home, what it meant to belong, and I think both for myself and for for the people that I met, and that's been a very fascinating journey. For each of the people that I've met, there are stories. For instance, the Urdu poet that I met in Jamshedpur, who's known as Shaida Chini, who's an accomplished Urdu poet, been published in various magazines and journals. He has a couple of books to his name. Lives in Jamshedpur, speaks fluent Urdu. It's very fascinating to see how the families, the communities assimilated into the local communities, and also how they kind of try to keep their culture alive. And it's been a fascinating exchange, I would say, a dialogue, and I think that's what's been very exciting about this project. What I'd ideally like to do is to kind of open this out to questions, and maybe that would be a way for me to kind of
As a second generation Chinese migrant, I want to ask you, how different do you feel like the community in Calcutta, in China, like different in the sense and sensibility of them, and also how well are they withholding their cultures? Everybody can hear me, right?
Well, they heard the question, I think, so.
Okay.
yeah.
So you want to repeat it?
Yeah.
So as a second generation Chinese migrant, I want to ask you, like, how do you feel, how different is it, like, compared to Chinese community in Calcutta to, like, real China mainland? In terms of sense and sensibility, and also how well they are upholding their Chinese traditions.
William, you want to answer that? William's a photographer as well, and was also in my slideshow. William, you want to answer that? I think that's kind of...
Now you got me nervous now. You want the mic?
Yeah, pass it to you.
It's also a coincidence that, I have Pablo sitting next to me, and Pablo was one of the first people that I know of who shot Chinese way back in the 80s. It's also one of the first projects on a community that you attended, if I'm not mistaken.
To be honest, I'm a fourth generation Indian Chinese. For me, I'm more Indian now than I'm Chinese. In fact, till about 6 months ago, I never visited China. So, and I learned more about China from Vidura than from any other textbook or program or anything. And I'm not saying this to praise him or anything like that, but that's the truth. And my knowledge of China is like zero till I met Vidura. In fact, we never speak about it at home. I don't really know much about China. And, like everything about me is Indian except the way I look, possibly, I guess. Yes, the only like my generation still speaks Hakka Chinese, but the generation that's newer, that after me, some of them don't speak any Chinese at all. They only speak either Hindi or English or both. Yeah, I hope I've answered your question.
What about traditions in terms of sort of festivities and food and?
Some of it you saw in the slideshow. The New Year celebration is very big in Calcutta. I mean, it's the only place we really celebrate, with any festivities. Other than that, it's just, dinners and get-togethers with family. If you go every year in Cal, that's normally Chinese New Year, which is end of Jan, beginning of Feb. It changes every year. In Calcutta is where they have the lion and dragon dances still, and the younger generation is trying to keep it alive. However, it's a little diluted and a little Indianized, like our food. So, in fact, just want to point out, Indian Chinese food. I went to China in July of this year for the first time, and food there doesn't taste anything like what you get here. The Chinese food.
Well, I would add to what William was saying. I think some of the traditions here are far more alive than they are in China. I think they're far more in their purer form, the way they were practiced maybe 40, 50 years ago. You see them more here. I think the big difference is that, the way the language has evolved. For instance, language here, in terms of the Chinese language here, has evolved very differently from, say, language in the mainland. And for instance, I think even the kind of language that William would speak would be a little more purer, in the sense it's from a different generation from what the Chinese they speak in the mainland now. So if William goes to a place where they speak Hakka, for them his Hakka would be archaic, in the sense it's a different way. Traditions are alive. I mean, there's also kind of assimilated beautifully into local cultures. When you're in Calcutta, for instance, you could be, dancing with the Mausi or the lion, the lion dances that take place. But there would be also these drummers from, who drum at Durga Puja and stuff like that. And so there's this fantastic mix that's taken place. And you go to small towns, where you have more people from the Hubei community, the dentists and stuff. They're totally assimilated in local communities, and they speak local languages and stuff. And you don't really feel that you're, I mean, I think one of the more well-known Chinese here is Jang, who was part of Indian Idol. I've never met him, but sings. I mean, fluently. I don't think there's much to look into that as such. How Indian or how Chinese. I think it's an ethnic group. It's a community. I wasn't really looking at that per se, but that's part of my journey as well.
I have been there in Tanjore once. Now I have not able to document something, but sure. I'm in touch with somebody who's telling me there's a lot of stories about this. Now what he's telling me is about now a lot of young Chinese people are migrating to France and other European countries, and because they are feeling some minorities issues over there, and a lot of other, they are shutting down their Hakkas and their shops, Chinese foods and other things. And might be if you are able to document and you can lighten up on this.
See, I think, the Chinese came here roughly in the 1780s, and I'm just going to quickly go down that little history. But rather, I'll give you the example of one family that I know of, where the family came in the 1920s, 1930s. This gentleman who'd come from China, from Guangdong, went back to China in the 1930s with his young daughters. He had 2 young daughters, and he left them there with his parents. In the belief that he would come back, pick them up in a year's time, and then bring them back to India. The Civil War happened in China. The Kuomintang was fighting the communists, and then subsequently Mao came to power, and he could never go back. The rest of his 5 kids grew up in India, and subsequently, the big watershed was, I think, 1962, when the war took place between India and China. It's fairly unacknowledged fact of Indian history that over 3,000 Chinese were interned in Deoli in Rajasthan some almost for about 6 years. And that's when a lot of the people, most of the Chinese who were here worked in the docks, they worked as fitters and they worked as carpenters in the docks in Calcutta. They lost all their jobs. They had to start from scratch. I've known of stories where I've known people who've smeared ash on their faces to disguise themselves and pass themselves off as Nepalese and work in Shamshan ghats and carry bodies, to just make a living. And it was a very dark period for them. This is the time when the beauty parlors came up, because that's when the restaurants came up. It was a time when they were trying to reinvent themselves and find a way. And a lot of people started migrating at that time to Canada to just kind of move on. And that's what's happened. And after that, there's always been this sense of insecurity. I met families in Chennai where families were, what if there's another war with China? Would we again be interned, or would we have to go through the same kind of betrayal, almost a sense of betrayal that they felt, during '62. So there's been this sense of wariness about what might happen. Coming back to this gentleman, so most of his family is now in Canada or Sweden, and it's interesting, a lot of the Chinese who were born before 47 lived on they had Chinese passports, or they had British passports. Some of them, from Hong Kong had British passports. And so in this case, with this one daughter of his, she went to Sweden, and they all travel on something called a no objection to return to India certificate. It's part of the Foreigners Act. And the government did not acknowledge it. So she had to go to China for the first time. So there's almost this sense of, and a lot of people live in fear because they almost feel that they're going to be moved away at any time. So yes, there is a sense of awareness, and it is actually a very closed community. I've been working on this for 5 years, and I think it's only now that I really feel that I'm very comfortable. I think people are more comfortable with me also, being part of their, the festivities, and I've been helped a lot by friends. William's one of them, had some great times, and I think made a lot of friends, and that's really made the difference for me in that experience in the community. So yes, there is a sense of readiness for people living in
Did you, in some manner, in any of your edits, which is not here, try and address that whole issue where, you call it intern, they were like prisoners of war. So you use a very polite word, but they were like in prisoner of war camp. Did you sort of address any of that, any remnants that you sort of saw, found, which you could photograph, or suggest that sort of period?
Very little that I found, but yes, a lot of people started talking to me about it, and I've been recording that. And I plan to when I put my project together, make that a part of my, the photographs as well, as part of the project as well. There are also for instance, after the '62 war, when people were, left to go from the camps, they had to report every week almost, or every fortnight, every month, to the local police station to tell them about their whereabouts. People couldn't travel from one city to the other without permission. And I have some of those documents, for instance, where there are these, stamps from the police authorities which kind of state that they've had to report every day, every week. And it was almost like even living in prison, even after being kept outside.
One more. You've principally chosen to shoot this in the wide format, so that's filmed. But you think you may change, or you may just continue and mix formats, because the digital would offer you so much more, especially for night.
I don't know if I'd switch to digital, but yes, switching formats is something that I've been considering for a while, and working with multiple formats. And I think that's what happens when you're working on a long-term project, that you can kind of take the time out to experiment with different formats. I've been shooting a bit of 35 as well. I switched recently to looking at the square format as well. I'm not sure I'd switch to digital, but yeah, definitely working with multiple formats, definitely. That's something that I'm very keen to do. Also, this has been a long process of getting to know people, and it's not that the first time that you meet someone or you spend a couple of days with them that you get something that's very definitive that you'd like, and I look to go back to people. There are a lot of people that I've constantly kept visiting, built up a relationship with them. Some people that I've met several times but never shot them or taken photographs of them. But I know that I will go back, and that's something in a long-term project that you have to keep thinking about. Do I have to shoot just because I'm here, or do you shoot when you really feel that you need to, that you can or you want to? So it's a mix of things. Yeah,
Thank you. You mentioned highs and lows.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me a little bit about what in the project worked beyond your expectations and what has not happened? Like what you thought would happen hasn't happened, and how you tried to work with that.
I think the first time that I was there in 2003, when I was kind of walking around in Tanga, and I saw those tanneries, I never thought I could get inside. There's these really high walls, and if anybody's been to Tanga, Chinatown, you see that they look almost like fortresses, almost inaccessible. And so that was one. That was kind of I started out with this place. It's good. It's so, this whole world is so closed in a way, and I can understand why it was so closed. I mean, now that I know more about them, when I first met people in 2003, I wasn't aware of what happened in '62 and a little more about the community. But I've had friends in Bangalore from the community and elsewhere who really helped me out, and they really made me part of their life and part of everything. The community in Bangalore is very active, and I felt like I belonged there, and it was really nice because they kind of put me in touch with families in Calcutta, their relatives, and so it almost went from one family to another family, to met other members of their family, and that was a fascinating experience because then you're totally taken in, and I think that was really worked very well for me because people were very open, very generous, and I could understand much better their reticence for being a little closed. I mean, once I learned more about the community, but I think that once I was in, it's been a fantastic journey since then. What didn't work? Yeah, I think the lows have been not so much to do with the community per se, or the people that I was shooting, but also the fact that I couldn't always give the kind of time to the project that I wanted to do, and I think that was a struggle to kind of balance out some of the work that I was doing in terms of assignments and the work that I wanted to do. And I'd make money on assignments and then go and travel and shoot this work. And I think those are times that there are times that you want to just pick up your camera and get out, and you feel that there is this sense of rhythm that you've built up into your work. Because very honestly, on a long-term project, it's not easy to kind of shoot 10 assignments and then just cut off everything and go for 1 week and come back. And I'm the kind of person, I'm a very slow photographer. I like slow cooking as well. And it's, so I like to take my time to get into spaces and take time and so it's been a long process. It's been a very long process.
My question is really about when you titled this presentation Home, and you've done a lot of work on the Chinese in India, and you've talked about the sense of home, displacement, all of that. I'm just trying to understand how you deal with this project at a certain level. I mean, I'm wondering how much of the politics, the international politics that China is so much part of, does that affect your work? Does that play into your work? Does that affect your relationships? I mean, is that something that you think about consciously, or does that exist outside of the sphere of your work? Because for me, it's interesting to look at a project on, Chinese refugees as such in India. I mean, not refugees, but it is, you're talking about this idea of home, and I'm just
yeah, I do think about it, but it's I think often my relationship with China, or the fact that people assume, given that I've lived in China for so many years, my relationship with China is more with its people. I mean, I think even when I was there, it was with the people as such, and that's what my relationship's been about. And even here with this project again, it's been trying to understand the people. I do understand there is an international dynamics to how China plays its politics and stuff. But very honestly, I've kind of kept it to the people that I've met and kind of tried to understand that better. I think what you're saying is very relevant to look at kind of more international dynamics. But I kind of focus more on the people that I've met. Kind of, it's more like stories. I mean, it's everyone that I've met had stories to share, and for me, my photographs then become a document of that meeting, or the stories that I've accumulated over time, and that for me has been the crux of my project so far. Yeah.
Not to confuse anyone. Okay. You did a nice exhibition in Tangra this year, right?
Yeah.
So can you share your experiences about of the exhibition, about how people reacted to seeing their photographs, or
You want to see the picture?
yeah.
Why not?
Add to that was that sort of asking the people who you've been meeting here and photographing here, or where they came from, and probably later going to the places where they were from, do a comparison there.
It was done earlier this year in Tangra and in Tileti Bazaar, which is where the two large communities live. And in Tangra, mostly the Hakas, and in Tileti Bazaar, Bo Bazaar area, you have mostly Cantonese. And I've been working on this for many years, and people would see me with my camera walking around, and I think people were very curious as well. And I would often be asked, what are you shooting? What are you doing? And I'm sure you're all very familiar with Blow Up, which Akshay and Kapil have been doing successfully for a couple of years. And I found that idea very interesting. Though I haven't been part of Blow Up myself, this is in a way a small tribute to them as well. I put up my pictures in the market, in the main market in Tangra. And we had a whole mix of people come in and take a look at the images. This is, sometimes I feel as photographers, we shoot and then, we move out, and then somewhere, you don't really engage with the communities. And for me, this was a way to kind of give back and share my work with them. And very honestly, this was a very enriching experience for me. I'd also been a little stuck in my own work, trying to understand how to take it further. I've been, shooting things, and I didn't really want my project to be an anthropological kind of project in a way. And I wanted to kind of meet people, and the responses were fantastic. I had one lady who walked up to me and said, I was in the camp in 1962, and people are usually very reticent about talking about the experiences in their camp, but she saw these images and she just walked up to me and said, this is what happened to me and my family. And for me that was very rewarding. And there have been people who've just welcomed me off, just taken me home, and we've had some really nice conversations. I haven't really shot a lot of the people that I met, but I think it led to a certain dialogue which I think was very important. Between the people that I was shooting and myself, and not necessarily only those that I photographed, but a larger set of people. So again, this year I plan to do this, but do a much larger kind of work. This is in Beau Bazaar, Tirati Bazaar area. But here I was beaten by a woman who comes to sell dumplings once a week at the market. She's far more popular. So I think she's the one in the purple pants. So, you know, they're trying to get people to come and see the pictures and stuff, but it was tough. So she's in one of the pictures actually. So she's cute. And this is very heartwarming, you know, that even if you just stand aside and see people come in, look at the work and, you know, react, they also know people in your photographs. They have relatives, they have friends, they have, you know, family in these images. They come in, you know, and it was really nice to talk to them about the whole experience. It doesn't. In a way that, you know, I think there's a sense of ease when I'm with the people, and that's, I think, because of my experience in China. For me, I mean, this is not an exotic community. For me, this is part of my experience of my life, and it has been for so many years. I didn't look at them as outsiders. So there were spaces inside their homes, and I think I've started to shoot some of that in my work, where there were traces of China in their homes or spaces that I could see, and I, you know, tried to make that part of my project. Somewhere there was a sense of, you could see that even they had a sense of longing for China, and that could be seen in little things in their homes and spaces. That's part of the documentation I've done as well.
Also, the casting was if you think of going back to certain places where.
Well, that has been on the cards, and I do plan to go next year to actually one particular village, which is Meishan, which is where a lot of the Chinese come from, Hakkas, mostly the Hakkas. And the idea was to kind of go there and have a look, travel with possibly some people from here, and you know, go with them to China to experience what it is to be there. I'm actually probably going to travel with someone who's going to meet her sisters there. I think they first met in 2004 when they were probably in their 60s, and I think this is going to be a second meeting for them. And you know, her description of her first meeting was quite interesting, and I'm quite looking forward to, you know, going with her and exploring the space. And the other thing I'm looking to do when I go back to China is I've been put in touch with a few families that lived, you know, who were in the camps in 1962 and then were deported by the Indian government to China. There's an agreement with the Chinese government. Roughly 2 to 3 ships, you know, traveled between India and China at that time, and Chinese was sent to China. It's difficult for me to say went home because they were here. Home for many of them was here, and try and meet them, and you know, hopefully they'll share their experiences of going to China at that time and what it meant, you know, when they first landed there. Because they lived in communes for a couple of years, and then the communes were disbanded, and then the people were just left to, left to be on their own.
No, actually, the question I asked you came from a very personal experience because my parents are from Lahore and Gujranwala, and they've often been, you know, conversations about whereas the Chinese, you know, population here is not the result of a partition, but for instance, my parents were. And with my mother, there always been a conversation about what it was like and what it would be to go back. In her case, being Hindu, yes, of course, there's no family there, but you know, the fact of the place and the environment, she can make it seem so real that. So that's where my question came from.
Well, I think even for the Chinese here, there's an entire generation of Chinese who've lived on these stories of China, on soap operas that, you know, family would bring down from Hong Kong and the mainland, and a lot of people still, you know, watch Chinese television, and for them that's their, you know, imagination of China. But it might be very different for someone who's lived here, you know, 3rd or 4th generation. But most people here you know, I would assume also William's generation has heard stories of China from their uncles and aunts and, you know, granduncles, and somehow their idea of China is fashioned on that. And it just depends on when that granduncle was last in China or that uncle or aunt was in China. So these are these stories that kind of build, you know, an imaginary homeland, to borrow, I think, a term from Rushdie. So.
Pass the mic back, please.
Generation Chinese, we heard about stories from our uncles and aunts. I really didn't hear any stories. I heard it from you. I want to personally thank you for doing this, because it's something that I can see the community dwindling and, you know, going to other more developed parts of the world. And I have no intention of going anywhere. I'm here for the long run. And the 62 war and all that, I really have no. Our families never talk about it. I guess it's a very touchy topic, and it's not something that we guys talk about. So I learned about it through him and what he's doing. And so initially my reaction to his documentation of my community was, oh, finally, thanks, somebody's doing it. You know, and you know, because I want to do, but I don't think I would be as good as him, or you know, I wouldn't be able to approach it the way he does it, because he's detached from the community in one sense. But I'm part of it, so my perspective would be a lot different from his. So thank you for doing this, and I've learned so much about my community in India than I would have ever learned from my relatives, from him and from his work. So my question is, when are you going to finish this?
But I think, William, if you have another perspective, you should do it. Because I think it's important to get different perspectives to the same story. I think it's very important that there is another story as well. Yeah, and Bahadur is also here, who got his version of the story from the 80s. So.
Can we hear a little bit about it?
When I went, you know, there was still a lot of young people, and it was, I think, a few years after that people started to go to Canada. I've been trying to go back, but you know, the problem is, because the factories have been sort of partially moved out, it seemed very empty. And also part of it is maybe I went at the wrong time of day, in the afternoon. You know, I thought I'd try and find some old, small eatery, not the big restaurants. Now in Tangra, there are a lot of bigger restaurants that have opened up and things. I wanted to find a family-run thing. I couldn't. But the time where I really enjoyed myself was the Chinese New Year, all the dragon dance, the firecrackers, and then leading up into Christmas. And in a lot of the tanneries, there would be kind of like parties, and then great food, because a lot of overseas Chinese would come to visit. So you really ate quite well, and it was quite authentic, because I did go for Time Life in '87 to do a South Chinese cuisine book for about I think 2.5 months. So I ate my way through China, so I can compare, you know, how good the food was. But you know, unfortunately, I lost touch, and then most people haven't, you know, I haven't been in touch with, so I don't know where they are. And so Vidur's idea, in fact, I was going to ask him that when he does his stage 2 of the street show, maybe I'll throw in some stuff, and maybe, you know, that may be a way of re-engaging with people.
Yeah, the stage 2 will be in, I think on the 3rd of February, 2012. Huh? Pablo's going to meet up.
I just want to add one small thing in connection with why he calls it Project Home. When I go abroad, anywhere, when I say I miss home, I want to go back home. Or for me, home is here in Delhi, here in India. And for many other people from older generations as well, when we speak in our local language, we say, we're going back home or we're returning home. We don't mean China, we mean India. So, and it's nothing political or anything. It's so much a part of me, and it just comes naturally. For me, I don't connect with China in any way whatsoever.
Yeah, I remember William's Facebook posts from when he was traveling in China, and I think when he came back, he said, "Finally home." Kind of thing. But the idea for home is not necessarily a construct of nationality. It could also be a physical construct. It could be in the arms of a friend or a lover or whatever. But I don't. So I've never really looked to kind of connect that with, to go back to what Roshan was saying about the politics of China and stuff. We kind of kept it more to personal journeys that people have made, and for me to understand some of those personal journeys has been fascinating. Each person that I've shot here have these fantastic stories of how they moved from one, tea garden somewhere in Assam to somewhere in Bangalore or Chennai or in Coimbatore, the odd family there. And I think some of those journeys are what really enriched my experience, making this project. And